Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you very much for taking the time to join us today for our webinar titled Metrology and Manufacturing 2020 Trends and Solutions with FARO Technologies. Today's webinar will be presented by Scott Weldon, Application Engineer, and myself, Jonathan Jennings, Product Marketing Manager here at FARO. I've been with FARO Technologies for just over a year and I focus on the 3D manufacturing portfolio of products as a product marketing manager. I've got about 10 years experience in various roles in various industries, helping manufacturers develop products to meet customer needs while reducing costs and improving processes. Today's agenda, we're going to start with manufacturing trends and opportunities, and this will be kind of an overview of what we've seen in 2019, both from an economic perspective and technology trends. And then we'll identify opportunities. A lot of these opportunities are going to focus on where metrology fits in, since that's kind of the core of what we do here at FARO. Then we're going to talk about development and manufacturing processes with Scott Weldon. He's going to go over some production applications for the various metrology solutions, and then we'll take questions. So I'm going to start out with the macroeconomic trends in manufacturing as we've seen over 2018, 2019. Over here on the right, I've got a chart here of the US Manufacturing Index. And really what this means is anything above 50 is continuing expansion. So you can see, we've been significantly above 50 since 2015. We saw a pretty steep decline in Q2 and Q3 last year. We got close to that, the flat growth line of 50, but really resurged in Q4, and all indications are that we're continuing that upward climb in Q1. Now, what drove that? Well, there are a lot of reasons. Last year we had a trade war with China, which I'm sure everyone is well aware of. But we also had a renegotiation of the NAFTA agreement, the U.S.-Canada Mexico agreement, USMCA, has been signed. We've got a China agreement that's been signed, and we've got indications that the US government is going to work closely with the UK to sign a much broader agreement as they work through Brexit. We had positive durable goods orders in Q4. This means good, big investments, goods that are not consumable. Those orders are up. We've seen on the other side of that, dropping inventory levels in durable goods, and that will combine to mean that manufacturers are going to have to start ramping up production to replenish those inventory levels and meet those growing durable goods orders. From the consumer side, GDP drives the U.S. economy. GDP has remained strong, very strong, continues to beat expectations across the board over the last several months. Job and wage growth is robust. And all that combines to the economists really thinking that to expect moderate growth over the midterm, that'll be driving capital expenditure investments. And a lot of those investments we're going to expect focusing on innovation, integration, and automation rather than expanded production. So making more out of what we have and really driving up the return on investment for the capital that is going to be expended and for the assets that we currently have in place at a lot of these big manufacturers. I'm going to start off our discussion here with trends and opportunities in innovation. Then we'll go on to integration and automation. First up, we have augmented reality. Augmented reality is a tool for assembly and maintenance, really because one of the big trends that we're seeing is that baby boomers are retiring and they're being replaced by millennials. So the need for knowledge transfer is a major challenge, especially in any sort of high-tech or mid-tech manufacturing. One solution is to deploy augmented reality technology where the user sees the real world with information digitally overlaid. AR devices help sense what the worker is looking at and displays only the data needed for the operation at hand. This is accomplished with video see-through technology using tablets or smartphones, or with optical see-through technology using smart glasses or wearable computers. For example, in production assembly operations, the AR device can prompt an operator with work instructions as augmented reality overlays the physical and digital twin models, monitors progress, provides feedback, and incorporates automated inspection for quality control. In another example, for maintenance and service operations, AR devices can provide maintenance and service technicians with detailed workflows and procedures such as asset diagnostics, work order information, recording capabilities, and a platform to contact remote experts for assistance. AR users can share that video feed with a mentor and the remote expert can overlay annotations and feed the user with manufacturing maintenance details for better contextualization. Companies that employ AR will achieve a faster throughput, reduce work, and lower downtime. Next up, we have a trend called asset subscribership. And this is where industrial customers are becoming asset light, meaning they don't want to own all of these big investments in equipment. So they transfer them over to the OEM through a subscribership program. This trend started in jet engines and has progressively filtering to industrial class assets, as consumers are often in the business of producing oil, chemicals, life science drugs. They're not in the business of maintaining and managing assets. This is prompting them to outsource the non-core activities. While asset subscribership may not happen fully in the short term, we have begun to observe customers owning the assets but transferring the maintenance aspects of those assets to OEMs. So for example, you may own a large metal stamping machine, or you may own a fleet of laser projectors or laser trackers, and you would hire a company or have a service agreement with a company like FARO, where we would come in and service those and align those and make sure that they're working on a regular cycle. So you don't have to worry about maintaining that important group of assets. You can focus on what you do best, which may be installing oil fields, manufacturing tubes or other heavy machinery and equipment. Next up is additive manufacturing, and we all know this is 3D printing, and up until recently, it's really kind of been a novelty, a high-tech trend, a cool thing to talk about and watch, but not really something that you could implement into everyday high-volume manufacturing. Well, that's changing. Advancements in additive manufacturing are helping small and medium-sized enterprises reduce energy costs, limit waste, and boost production. Plus, the technologies are becoming increasingly affordable. So we're going to see that continue to play out over the coming years. Next, we're going to move on to trends and opportunities in integration. Let's start off with robot-assisted manufacturing. In the past, systems cost hundreds of thousands of dollars, not including installation and programming time. But today, the most popular collaborative robot on the market is less than $35,000, which puts it within reach of smaller companies. Older systems used to require teams of robotic experts and engineers that would take weeks or months to program. But new systems can be taught simply by demonstration, with no knowledge of programming languages required. Force sensors, machine vision, and other innovations are making the new class of robots aware of their environment and their surroundings so that they can work safely beside people. The same robot can also be used to fabricate, move objects, test, pick, and pack. So flexibility is the name of the game. Once used primarily for fabrication, robots are being deployed in agriculture, construction, and laboratories. Next up, we have data use, not hoarding. And really here, what's driving the innovation is software. Software is being consistently and constantly hallmarked as a method to speed up manufacturing and digitalization. However, before investing in software for data collection, manufacturers should begin their 2020 by implementing a coherent data strategy. Rather than simply collecting and storing massive amounts of data, manufacturers must identify the results they want to achieve with that data, and then identify and determine how data can help them meet those business objectives. Consider this example. A manufacturer wants to improve its ROI in the facility by reducing the amount of waste from production. So to identify the areas of improvement, manufacturers would need to collect production data and compare this with an ERP system results. Without predetermined strategy, manufacturers run the risk of simply collecting and storing hordes of data, but there's no value in that data if it's left to gather dust. Over the next 1 to 2 years, we hope to see data strategies become an integral part of manufacturing, and solutions in cloud computing and AI are going to drive the ability to use that information to make decisions and improve processes. And finally, we have 100% inspection targets. So this is something that's been implemented in military and aerospace for a long time. Every part that goes into a plane or a spacecraft has been inspected. But now we're seeing that happening in the automotive space. And this is really driven by more effective and efficient inspection tools that require less specialized training. Um, and because of that, we're seeing OEMs really driving that down to their tier 1, 2, and 3 suppliers. So Ford is now starting to require its tier 1, 2, and 3 suppliers to provide 100% inspection or close to 100% inspection. Next, we're going to discuss trends and opportunities in automation, starting with closed loop digitalization, which ties very closely to the data capture discussion on the prior slide. Digitalization and the emergence of affordable hardware has driven industrial markets to digitize and sensorize their processes. However, the industry over the next decade will become more focused on closing the loop between data extraction and value creation. In order to achieve this, digitalization, that is taking action on data captured in an automated manner, will become increasingly paramount. At the same time, digitalization will be enabled by very affordable hardware driven by low-cost self-serve software. Next, we have digital twins, and digital twin technology will become more and more relevant and utilized. A digital twin basically is a virtual representation of an asset, whether it be a machine or an assembly line or some other piece of complex machinery. Digital twins provide an archive of asset-related information, such as drawings, models, bills of material, engineering analysis, dimensional analysis, manufacturing data, and operational history. This historical information can be used as a baseline when benchmarking asset performance. The digital twin will also have an archive of real-time data acquired via integrated sensors or external sources that can be used for condition monitoring, failure diagnostics, and both predictive and prescriptive analytics. Any knowledge gained will add value to the service life of an asset, such as improving efficiency, reducing downtime, anticipating failures, and providing insights for continuous improvement. The digital twin can also be deployed to provide plant personnel with operational intelligence by bringing together big data, statistical sciences, and rules-based logic. This is something that is great, especially as manufacturing gets more and more complex, being able to look at your entire facility and anticipate when you need to service things and identify where parts are failing at a increased rate from what you would expect. You may be able to identify inputs or materials that are driving that, or perhaps it's improperly trained operators who are driving downtime on some of your equipment, which can allow you to make the decision to provide more training, etc. But this is something that you'll see continue to expand out beyond some of the traditional things like power plants where it's heavily utilized now. Finally, we have machine vision. And machine vision is 3D imaging being integrated into assembly and manufacturing lines. Really what it's doing is helping to drive deep learning and driving autonomous adaptation to production variations. It effectively provides the handling of judgment-based part location, inspection, classification, and character recognition challenges efficiently when compared to conventional machine vision systems. So it can drive robotic movements to pick, move, and work alongside humans. Deep learning, where you've got maybe 5 different variations of an assembly that might come across an inspection line, and it will be able to figure out which one it's supposed to be, compare that to a CAD model, and identify what may or may not be missing or in the wrong place. So really it's creating that human factor, but doing it in a way that is really driven by machines and by logic processes. Now you may be thinking, wow, that was a lot of information, a lot of trends, a lot of complicated and expensive sounding solutions. What does that mean to me practically? Well, at FARO, we really sum this up into, understanding that plants and processes are getting smarter, more automated, more driven by knowledge. This is being executed through advances in software, hardware, training, and the need to compete in an ever-changing and ever-competitive global landscape. So for what we do and focusing on the 3D metrology landscape and is really focusing on higher accuracy, more reliable measurements through improvements in hardware and software. We are focusing on the portability of measurement solutions, whether that's taking a quantum scan arm down to a large part being worked on the CNC lathe and being able to scan that part mid-process and make sure that it is tracking to where you need it to be in the manufacturing process. We're working on faster and more efficient measurement processes through software and through hardware. So improvements in hardware, gathering more information more quickly, but also largely through software and taking that point cloud information and being able to overlay it to a CAD model or to a golden part model and quickly pull out where those deviations and potential problem areas are. On-machine in-process measurements through machine vision is a big piece of that as we continue to move into the future, and you'll see more exciting things from FARO on that in the coming months and years. Automated inspection routines is something that we focus on quite a bit through a number of our solutions that Scott's going to present in really taking the art out of it and making it a very process-driven approach where you don't need to have someone with years and years of experience in metrology. Really, you've got a workflow, you've got a tool, and by clear instruction, you're able to replicate the inspection process and the inspection routine to get the same results every time. And then the increasing need for statistical process control. So our software solutions such as Build It and Cam2 provide that, where if you've got multiple inspection stations and you're inspecting a high volume of parts, that you'll be able to use that statistical process control to identify issues automatically, provide predictive alerts. So say you're analyzing the same widget over a 3-month period, and you're able to identify that the widget that comes off of assembly line 3 is consistently having a missing bolt. Well, you may be able to see that missing bolt is being put on manually in assembly line 3, and that person is new and maybe they need some additional training. So those types of things where you're able to see the bigger picture in a large amount of data, but using the software to identify the issues and help you fix them. So I'm going to go ahead and hand it off to Scott Weldon, who's going to drive and dive deep into the solutions that FARO provides. Scott, off to you.
Hello everyone, thank you for carving out some time today for this presentation. My name is Scott Weldon. I'm an application engineer with FARO. I've been with FARO for about 3 years now. Prior to that, I received a Bachelor's of Science for Engineering Physics from Embry-Riddle over in Daytona Beach. The main role that I play here at FARO is a trainer of Cam2 as well as some hardware, so laser trackers, arms, scan arms, and visual inspect. Along with those responsibilities, we also provide customer service, voice of customer, and overall support of the customers. Here we have an overview of the different supplier levels from an OEM to their tier 1 supplier, their supplier at tier 2, and all the way down to tier 3. We interact with any and all of these. Most often we'll see that the OEM decides the process and where things get inspected, to what degree they get inspected, and how they're inspected. So this could be, they determine that they need everything inspected from all the way at the bottom of this pyramid, or only at certain different places. This slide provides you with an overview of automotive development and manufacturing process. Of course, it's a simplification, but in general, it helps us to explain the manufacturing cycle. It begins with your R&D. They decide what they want to produce, then they create the tools in order to produce that, then they actually create the parts themselves, and then final fit up and assembly. Here we have a slide detailing the main applications in each of those different phases. I confirm the leading automotive manufacturers and suppliers leverage FARO's 3D metrology, laser projection, and imaging solutions to boost their productivity and efficiency across the whole supply chain and life cycle. From your R&D, maybe it's reverse engineering, to your pre-production, where you're going to build those tools, the jigs that everything's going to fit to the actual production and final inspection before it leaves the facility. Today our focus is on the application in the production area. We've selected a few significant examples showcasing our solutions. We'll see how our hardware and software has been implemented in order to respond to the most important operator needs, allowing them to streamline their manufacturing process. Some of these include inline inspection, on-machine inspection, trend analysis, statistical process control, and general troubleshooting. Why do we measure? Well, we want to know more about the process so that we know exactly how it behaves. We want to validate the end product. We want to have confidence that the process is repeatable and we have the same product no matter what. And we want to gather context and relevant data. That way we can make sure that if it is a little bit off, we can tweak it in order to create the product that we want at the end. This will help to improve efficiency and productivity. Here we've listed some of the large challenges that drive FARO solutions. First off, reliable inspection. In order to make an informed decision, you need quality data that you can rely on. Now there's reduced costs that are associated with poor quality. You can catch that quality in process, or at least before it moves on to the next stage. Enabling large parts to be inspected. This could be parts themselves or fixtures, jigs, anything that's too large to bring to a conventional CMM. Instead, we can bring the portable CMM to that piece. Flexibility on how you measure. So something with a portable CMM that's kind of unique is that you can move it wherever you need it in order to take the measurements that you need, rather than, like I said before, taking that part to a CMM, then you're stuck with whatever size CMM you have. Now there's identifying inefficiencies. This could be anywhere in your process. You see that the data doesn't match what you're expecting, and then you can drill down and see where exactly that inefficiency is coming from. In terms of metrology, FARO products allow performing part and assembly inspection, alignment, guiding and controlling manufacturing processes. Part of the part and assembly inspection would include inspection on arrival, making sure that the supplier before you is supplying you with quality parts, as well as the same thing going from your final product and verifying that it is correct before it moves on to the next tier. Overall, this reduces the reject rate and improves performance for the entire supply chain across the board. When it comes to alignment, your fixtures, jigs, and tooling are all very important in creating a quality product. So here you can inspect those, verify that they are compliant with the specs that you have, and if not, you can see which direction everything needs to be adjusted in order to create a quality product. Then under manufacturing process, this can be anything from rivet and hole placement, missing parts, verifying that layers are going in correctly. All of this will help reduce your reject and rework rate, as well as increase productivity. FARO products and solutions have been adopted worldwide throughout various industries and across all supplier tiers, with products and solutions which allow customers to lower overall costs, simplify their processes, reduce on-site measuring time, decrease scrap and rework, and drive the innovation necessary to remain competitive. On the left-hand side here, we have some of our hardware devices. We have our arm and scan arm, which are our short-range metrology devices. We have our laser tracker, which is a long-range metrology device. We have laser imaging and projection in the bottom left-hand corner, as well as visual inspect, which is an augmented reality solution. On the right-hand side, we have some of our software, which helps control the hardware. We've got Build It and Cam2. One way that we can streamline the production process is using on-machine inspections. What this means is we'll be able to take the portable CMM, say an arm, out to a part, inspect it on the machine that it's being machined on, The arm will be able to understand the temperature that it's in and compensate for that. What this allows us to do is make a corrective action while the part is still attached to the piece that it's being machined on. This allows us to skip over the process that would normally include removing the part from the machine, bringing it to a quality room where it's going to absorb the temperature that's in there, inspect it, and then try and put it back on that machine exactly how it once was so that we can make a corrective action. All of this streamlines the process, reduces how long it takes, and improves the quality overall. Inspection and calibration of tooling and jigs is extremely critical for producing quality parts. As you know, throughout the production process, oftentimes tools and jigs could move, they have wear and tear, perhaps there's a crash. Whenever any of this happens, we need a way to bring that tooling and jig back to the same standard that it once was. FARO's portable CMMs allow a way to do that. So with them, we can inspect tooling. If it's out, we can see in which direction. We can use something like a digital readout in order to bring it back to a known zero and then start producing quality parts again. For something like a large jig, you'd use a laser tracker, which is the long-range metrology device. Something on the smaller side would be an arm or a scan arm. Another production hurdle that we see often is robot calibration. Robots perform a very precise movement in order to do their jobs efficiently. Oftentimes robots will drift as they're used just due to the constraints that are placed upon them. What we can do is we can use a laser tracker in order to map out the actual movement and then compare that to what we were expecting that robot to do. Having those two data sets means that we can compensate for any drift that has occurred and pull that robot path back into where it should be. A couple words on trend analysis. Measuring parts, as we've established, is quite critical to verifying their accuracy on a production run. But if we inspect every single part, that can become very time consuming. One way that we can reduce this time is instead of inspecting every part, we inspect every, say, fifth part. What this will allow us to do is we'll be able to map out the trends as that production run is happening in order to see where we started and where we currently are. This will allow us to predict when the parts will be produced out of spec, and we can stop the production run before that time, inspect our tooling or jigs like we saw before, make the appropriate corrections, and bring everything back into spec before it ever runs out. One way to perform that trend analysis is through SPC, or Statistical Process Control. FARO's software platforms provide an effective and smooth method for this to happen. We record the data, we store it, we organize it, then we display it on a graph like you see on the right here. What this allows us to do is show the operator what's going on with the current production parts, and then eventually predict what's going to happen with future parts. What we'll see here is eventually it'll trend out of spec, and this will allow the operator to preemptively take measures to make sure that those parts are never produced. Because we're mapping out every individual feature here as well, we can determine which portion of the process is the part that's actually trending out, which helps the operator identify which piece they need to go and adjust in order to bring that trend back into spec. Speaking of identifying the core issue with a production run is troubleshooting. So troubleshooting is where we're going to try and search for the root cause of a part becoming out of spec. What we can do with FARO's 3D measuring and data capturing solutions is provide an organization with a complete data set. Something like what you see here on the left would be a scan part with a scan arm. This allows data to be captured across the entire part instead of individual, let's say, pin pricks. This allows much more data to be captured and allows a much more comprehensive conclusion to be found. Thanks to the portability of our devices, parts can be inspected at different places throughout the process. That way we can narrow down exactly where the process is being disrupted. And eventually you can compare those parts to a CAD model. So you can see exactly where the parts should be and where your production run actually is. Virtual inspection. So this is an augmented reality solution. In the picture on the left, you can see green lines. This is a CAD model that has been overlaid on top of a real life part. What this allows the operator to do is go through and look for anything that could be missing or misoriented. Oftentimes brackets will get placed backwards or upside down. Perhaps there's rivets that should be somewhere but they aren't, or vice versa. Another benefit to an augmented reality solution such as this is it allows the operator on the floor to have access to an entire CAD model without having to drag around a whole bunch of prints, because oftentimes prints could have something like a hidden feature or something that's difficult to tell really where it is, but the CAD model is the complete assembly of that part, which is a huge benefit for the operator to be able to manipulate that and see exactly where everything should be without having to drag around prints or a laptop. Assembly guidance. So what we have here is a laser-based projection technology. What it allows us to do is project a CAD model for the operator to follow. That way they see a proper sequence, location, and orientation of the part that they're about to put on the assembly. That could be something like a part that's going to be welded. It could be where they're supposed to drill, where they're supposed to lay something before the next process is completed. Or something on a larger scale is such as a factory floor layout, where your production lines are going to go, where your machinery is going to be set, where the holes for those machines are going to be drilled to the floor, anything along those lines. So the hardware side of this particular solution is called Tracer SI Laser Projector, and the software side is Build It Projector. And Build It, what we're able to do is go through and select which pieces of the CAD we want to show the operator and what sequence we want to show that to them in. Then the projector is going to take that input, go ahead and project it through the laser to the operator so they can follow that step by step. Some of the capabilities here are the guided assembly. That way it's a very repeatable process for the operator to follow. It can be very complicated, but since it's one step at a time, it's easy to follow. We can do a verification step where we scan the final product, compare it to the original, verify that everything is where it should be. And then we can also record the duration of production cycles so we can see that improvement of the operator as time goes on. Some of the added value here is an obvious reduction in scrap and rework because the operator is guided through the entire process. We can also see a reduction in the time needed for an inspection because we have the in-process verification scan. And we reduce the use of hard tools and templates, which can be a time-consuming process to bring those in, use them, and then remove them, bring the next set in. Instead, it's an all virtual process. Composite layout and positioning. So with the Tracer SI and Build It combination, what we're able to do is go from CAD to template almost immediately. This reduces our time for layout and setup. It also provides a standard template no matter what cell you're in, no matter what shift you're on, no matter which operator happens to be there or their experience level. We're able to detect and reduce the manufacturing errors in real time. This means less rework, less scrap. Also, by not using physical templates, it means that you don't have to build them, you don't have to store them, and you don't have to maintain them. You also don't have to replace them. If you happen to have a tweak, it's just a matter of a new CAD model, and you get a new virtual template, and you're up and running. Flush and gap. So this is the relationship between two adjoining body panels. This is absolutely critical for proper appearance on a vehicle. What we're able to do is scan that gap and make sure it's uniform from one end to the other, as well as one gap to the next gap. What you see in the right-hand side here is a laser line probe, which is attached to an arm, which is on top of a tripod. The portability of this solution allows us to scan one gap and then move to the next, and so on and so forth until we've scanned everything that we need on a vehicle, and then we can compare those gaps to one another If everything's properly aligned, we should get a uniform width, and if not, then we can identify where that inconsistency is and then address it. Another type of inspection that we see in the automotive industry often is a suspension or a chassis component inspection. So oftentimes parts are going to have things like points or holes, sometimes slots or edges that need to be dimensioned from somewhere. Oftentimes these require a CMM, so the parts will be taken off the production floor into a quality room. They've got to sit and acclimate to the temperature. They get inspected and then put back on the production floor. What we can do with the inherent portability of an arm is we can take our scanning or our metrology device to the parts and inspect them inline. This allows us to shorten up the time that it takes to go through that process, as well as the amount of product that we have to have in-house in order to buff that line. We're also able to scan and compare to CAD. So we're able to see a point cloud across the entire part and a color deviation map that shows us the difference between the part and what it should be according to the CAD model. So to conclude, let's take a moment to review the takeaways of this presentation. So one of the first topics we spoke about was an on-machine inspection. This is where we can take our portable CMM to the part, inspect it while it's being produced, and make corrections on the fly. Next, we were looking at jig and tooling inspection. This is something that tends to drift out over time. You're able to inspect it. If it's far enough out, we're able to bring it back to that nominal position. That way the production parts are back to where they should be. Another thing that drifts out was robot calibration. So here we're expecting a robot to make a particular pass, but as time goes on, that pass starts to drift a little bit. We're able to map out that pass, compare it to what it should be, and then calibrate that robot so it's back to where it was intended to go. Another thing we spoke about was trend analysis in SPC. So there we're able to inspect parts, maybe not every part, but maybe every fifth part, and we're able to predict how that part is going to be produced in the future. That way we can cut production at a particular point, adjust our tooling before that part is ever produced out of spec. Laser projection and composite layout was next on the list. This is where we use a CAD model. We produce a template, and then we're able to project that template for the operator to follow. Again, it's going to be a step-by-step process. That way they only see the relevant part as they produce it. Then we looked at flush and gap. So this was that gap between two adjoining body panels on a vehicle, which shows us whether or not they're properly aligned. And then lastly was kind of your traditional dimensional inspection, where we were looking at individual parts to verify that individual features are where they should be on that part, or perhaps we took a scan and compared that back to CAD to see a color map, see if we have any deviations there. So this time, I want to first off again thank you for your time and sticking around, and we'll go ahead and open the floor up to questions.